Diane, I'm listening to a podcast, Black Lodge Trivia Night. I've never heard so many game aspirations in my life.
All right, welcome back to Black Lodge Trivia Night. This is Art, and as you can see, we are once again down a Matt and a Patrick. They are traveling at the moment. One of them may or may not have tried to sit on a very famous crystal chair recently. Allegedly. I guess we got to throw that word around. So it's going to be me doing some more Tales of the Strider for the One Ring. And if you remember last time, we're just going to get right into it. If you remember last time, let's bring up, I think it's this map. So if you remember last time, we had, a couple of times ago, we had gone to Numinas. We'd seen like the clan that had I think it was like two-headed monster or something. And it was a clan that came from the Etten Moors, traveled all the way across Rudar, the Lone Lands, to get to Numinas. And they had sort of made a little bit of a camp in parts of the ruins of Numinas. I was on my way back to explain things to them, and when I found a dead ranger from the Camp Thornmount, which is what I had actually originally been sent to go investigate. So when I got there, I broke the news. One of theirs was lost, attacked by wargs. Like, oh, that's interesting because, we have a dwarf here in camp that was also part of that same attack. That character's name was, I think, is it Floki? Might have been Floki. Yeah, I think it was Floki. So Floki's there. He's pretty badly wounded. And he's like, I came here to deliver a letter to my brother, Flonar, who I've heard is in a camp nearby. Turns out, Flonar, of course, we know from the camp in the Vale of Gold. He's like, but I'm too wounded to bring this letter to him. I offer to do it. I get to the Vale of Gold, and I realize that the entire area has been sacked by the orcs and the wargs that have come from the Etten Moors. All of the dwarves are killed. And Flonar in particular was tied to a pillar of nearby ruins and tortured, killed, obviously. But he went down swinging. There was like a pile of dead orcs around him before they subdued him and got him chained to the pillar. And he had a necklace on it that was made out of mithril. I think I rolled and sort of knew that. So they weren't able to rip the necklace off, but they did manage to break off whatever like pendant or item the necklace was holding, and that was gone. And so I sort of tracked and realized, in order for this whole camp to have been overrun, it had to be a pretty sizable group of enemies. It wasn't just like one or two. And so I was left with the decision, like, do I track them or do I report back and explain to Floki what has happened and to the camp, the dangers that are pretty close by. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to return to the camp. So let's first start by doing the classic weather tracker. Why not? Because it's going to take basically a day. So the weather tracker, again, is a D10 because we are not rolling for the first time. Got a 2. Now a 2 means that it's the same. So it was, after being pretty cold for a while, it got pretty hot. And it's going to stay pretty hot now. It's like late spring. Is it late spring? I guess it'd be... The first chapter I sort of imagine being like... because the way the game works, you're supposed to do like a Yuletide sort of break. So I figured it sort of started after that. So it would have been like late January or whatever into the beginning. So maybe it's getting late spring, I guess. So we're going to leave it where it is. We're going to roll for the wind. Again, it's a 1d3. Let me just see what happens when I do bunk. We roll a 2. So a 2, so the scale is 0 to 2. So it's 1, 2, 3. It's going to be breezy. So it's sort of like the breeze. The heat's pretty, it says it's hot, right? So it's uncomfortable. And the breeze, it's just enough to make you feel hotter, right? Like a stronger breeze would that's some relief. But this is just like hot breath, and you're just like, that's almost even worse. And so that's sort of the weather. Anyway, so yeah, coming back to Eriador, we're going to make our way back to the camp. So it takes about a day. So, and maybe the way it works is, I got to the camp sort of later in the day, maybe early evening. So when I pictured me discovering the carnage, basically at nightfall. So maybe what I do is I start to track the band of orc and realize I'm just one person. What am I doing? And I turn right around, but I travel through the night. So as morning is not like literally as morning's breaking, but relatively early in the morning as the camp is starting to sort of come to life, I stumble back into, and I always forget where I put this stuff. It was a town, and I think it was fantasy maps. There's a lot of good maps out there, I gotta say. I mean, yes, good, but also there's just a lot of options and a lot of, no shortage of like really talented artists willing to let you buy maps for your game, and I'm more than happy to do that. So get back to camp. Just so you know, I know all these have been slightly shorter sessions, these solo ones. This actually might be a little bit even shorter, because I'm starting to see the end of this second chapter in sight, and so I'm not going to try and extend it to fill the time, and when it stops, it'll stop. So I get back to camp. Am I on the map here? Might not be. Oh, I am. Okay. So I get back to the camp, and as I'm coming back, the last time I came into camp, people sort of filtered out of the shelters, kind of like get a little who's back. This time they're like, oh, he's back. Okay. And they can see immediately on my face that sort of 1,000-yard stare look. So I've seen some things, and they all sort of like, okay, get a little concerned, sort of maybe look down a little bit, like what's coming. And Hadant finally approaches me, and he's like, brother, your skin is pale. What did you find? And I say, Hadant, look, the orcs we were telling you about, the ones with the symbol, they overran Lonar's camp at the Vale of Gold. There's no survivors, and it appears that they had stolen something off of Flonar's person, off his neck. He had a mithril necklace. I don't know what was on it, but if that's what they were looking for, they found it. So I'm not sure what to say. And then he looks around. He's like, well, did you, are they headed down here? He's like, no. They seem to head east a little bit. I'm not sure how far east. I don't know if they're regrouping. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why, since I don't know why they're here. I don't know if they're regrouping to come attack your camp. Obviously, they must know of its presence to some degree. And Hadant, sort of shakes his head, and he's like, no, I don't want to believe that this involves us. We haven't done anything. You said they were looking for something, right? And I was like, well, no, I don't know that for sure. I just know they took something. It's like, well, maybe they've had their say. Maybe they've gotten their fill. And at that moment, one of the, remember I said there were like two of the wardens, one of them was killed. He had a letter on him that said he was actually still actively a warden. He had like a letter with a signet from Gillian. Is that the name? Gilrain, sorry. And then, his friend also confessed that, hey, I'm still on the job too. And he steps forward, And he says, but Hadant, how can we be sure? We have to do something, whatever that something is. We have to do something. And so and so some of the other, there's like the murmur, and I can't tell where the majority are landing, but I can tell that there's a discussion that needs to be had. And so I think what we're going to do is I think we are going to, not that I've done one in a while, but let's do a council session. And apologies, bear with me as I sort of stumble through this. And again, some of these details are coming from the One Ring Tales from the Lone Lands. That Overrun camp is actually part of one of the official adventures. But I'll get into some of that more. If I get to the ending, I'll talk more about what I did and why I did it. So let's break out a council session. Now, a council session is a pretty straightforward thing. And I really like the idea of it. It was something that I was not necessarily sold on when I first read the rules, but now having done it a few times, it's solid. It's not unique. A lot of games have, social mechanics, social conflict resolutions, and, pools that fill up to indicate success. But it's thematic, and I think it works here in this game. So what we're going to do, there's a couple of steps to the council sequence. The first one is to set the resistance. So to set the resistance, what are we asking for? What kind of help are they hoping to get? How do they intend to get it? So there's sort of 3 levels of difficulty: a reasonable request, a resistance of 3, a bold request, a resistance of 6, and an outrageous request, a resistance of 9. So there's a couple things I'm going to do. Let's use the dice to determine if I can figure out what it is. I think it's just these encounters you're seeing down here, these are from Harn. Also from Harn. So many good things from Harn. Gilray, no. Telling. I think what I want is telling. So the thing I'm trying to decide is, are the majority of the people here looking to back Hadant and his, hands-off reclusive approach? Or are things starting to turn the groundswell against that idea? Not against Hadant per se, but against that idea, given everything that's happened. So in my mind, I'm just going to roll it to see what the options are. Certain, likely, middling. I don't want it to be middling, because I feel like they've lost one of their own, and now there's an attack a day's march away that literally obliterated a camp. So I feel like it'd be likely that they are more on my side. So let's give that a shot. So I think it's likely that they are leaning towards action. Yes. Okay. So given that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the resistance to 3. Again, it's a reasonable request, and part of the reasonableness of it, even though Hadant himself may not be reasonable, part of the reasonableness in my mind is the fact that I've got some support from his own men. We're going to set the resistance at 3. I don't know if I have a way to do that. Did I import? I don't know if you can import, but there's a, for like Forged in the Dark games, there's like this nice like pie chart that you can use, and I don't know if I brought it over. Also, I don't know if it actually translates over, if it's like system or rule set specific, but regardless, it's I'm trying to remember how I would do it in Forged in the Dark, because I used it for like CBRPNK. I use it all the time, and it was quite handy. But so what we're going to do is we're going to set the resistance to 3. And so then it's a reasonable request. So then we have to determine the introduction. And the introduction is going to help determine how long we have to get those 3 successes. So it's not like a literal introduction. So the book sort of says you could use like awe, you can use courtesy, you can use riddle. Let me take a look at my character. Because again, it's not a literal introduction. It's sort of an introduction to the latest set of circumstances. I don't think awe would be correct. Could it be insight? Because I'm now about to try and I'm sensing that like the tide is turning on his reclusive position. So let's make it insight. Now I'm going to give myself I don't want to make it appear like I'm just totally stacking the odds in my favor, but I'm going to give myself a support from a companion die. And the reason, obviously I don't have any companions because this is a solo adventure, but again, I'm sensing that I have the backing of more of the men than I don't. And literally one guy just came out and said, what are we going to do about this? So let's see how it goes. Seeing a 1 on the D12 there, so that could have been terrible. But luckily, I absolutely knock it out of the... Oop, I just banged the mic stand, sorry. Absolutely knock it out of the park on the success dice. I've got 2 6s there, so it's an extraordinary success. And so what that means is when you have extraordinary successes, the roll is a base roll of success, and so the time limit is equal to 4 plus each 6 on the die. So I've got 6 rounds to get to 3 successes. So it's not a bad start to this. Usually I've had such bad luck with the with the council sessions in this chapter that it's nice to have one start to break my way. Okay, so then we start into the interactions. So with the interactions, you can give yourself, if the person's reluctant, if there's a reason why, a strong reason why the person would be reluctant to help you, you can give yourself like a 1d penalty, open, no modifier, friendly, like if they're wanting to help you in that sense, you can give yourself a bonus of 1d. So what I'm going to do is this is tricky. He doesn't want to help me, but everybody else does. So I actually might give myself like a 1d penalty, but I might give myself like the support from a companion because again, like peer pressure that might be applied. Okay, so first round. Yeah, I wish I remembered how to... It's here. There we go. Okay, so we've got a challenge tracker. We're going to create a new one. Windowed, sure. Total segments is 6 because we have... Okay, so that's what we're going to use. I knew I had it somewhere. I just didn't know how to do it. So, as you know, like every time I get a success, we'll fill one in. And then if you were going to, like, if there was like an opposing tracker, that's what these inner ones are for. So, but we don't have to worry about those in this case. Well, actually we do. We'll use the 3 rounds. We have 6 rounds to get 3 successes. So the outer ring will track the round. So it's the first round. Let's see how many successes we get. So usually they list in the book useful skills could be enhearten, insight, persuade, riddle, song. So again, song, no. Insight, maybe. Persuade, I'm bad at. But I think what I'm going to use is it explore or travel? If I were it might be hunting. I'm going to use hunting, because hunting would be like if I was tracking the band and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go with hunting. So I'm going to give myself a penalty die, but I'm also going to give myself support from a companion. Let's see how I do. Great success. Okay. So in a great success, do I give myself 2? Let me just double check if I get 2 successes for that 6. Yep, it counts as an additional success. So in that very first round, I've already got 2 successes. So so let's just imagine the ranger that's still like officially on the job. He just said what he just spoke his piece. And I sort of turned from them like, absolutely. Like, again, sorry, I just walked my, like you keep trying to say like, you don't want to engage in this fight. The fight is here. It is literally here. It has cost you one of your own already. Like, it's not that the fight is a day's march away. One of your own has fallen victim to these intruders. So you can keep telling yourself that you just want to avoid the fight, but you can't. You can't just ignore, your fallen brethren unless you're just willing to forget that to sort of keep your skewed point of view intact. And everyone's like, yeah, hey, yeah, we can't forget, so-and-so. And, sorry, there's now a truck right outside. But anyway. You know what? I'm going to be right back. I'm going to let this truck go by, and then I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Yeah, sorry, there's a truck that had to go by. It was getting kind of loud. So anyway, yeah, we, first round is all set. So now for the second round, I think I might go with... I'm going to try hunting. I think the first one was insight, and I did really well. Second one, I'm going to do hunting. And the idea here is like, look, I've sort of got the men more on my side, and now I'm going to make the logistical argument like it's very doable. Again, I'm going to give myself support, but a negative. Why should Eradan be miserable? Did I just screw something up? What did I do? I rolled a... I'm not sure why my shadow just changed. That's the problem. I'm worried, did I click... Or did I click on a hope die instead of support from a companion? That might be the case. Doesn't really tell me... No, it was supported. Man, I have no idea why that happened. Can I undo that? No. I'll have to try and figure out what my hope was before. And I don't think I rolled anything, like... A 12, I think, is like the bad one to roll. I rolled a 10. Anyway, I'm not going to worry about it because I don't think I should be miserable, so I'm just going to delete that. And yeah, so second round, I'm going to get a great success, so I can't fill it up more than I already did. So I turn to him, and I'm like, look, Adon, obviously, you can see your men want this. They want to do what's right by their fallen brethren. And I can tell you, like, I saw blood trails. They're not at full strength, even though they might be a larger warband. I saw blood trails. They're not going to move that quickly. Maybe a day and a half to 2 days head start, but we can catch them. We can catch them. We can do this. And everybody's like, yeah, yeah. And it's not bloodlust in the eyes of all the people, but it's realizing there is a call that they want to answer. They know it's the right thing, and they want to answer that call. So it's not bloodlust, like I want to rip their throats out. It's, yeah. So Hadant, looks around at the men, and they're all like, yeah, come on, we need to, for Franzi, whatever. And then he looks at me, and he realizes, at first it's a little bit of a, like, you turned everyone against me, but then he starts to realize, as he listens to the men, he starts to step back. And it's not about him, right? He wanted these things, and he was bringing these men along with it for what he wanted. And he's starting to rediscover that the world is obviously bigger than he is. And he starts to rediscover why he was a warden in the first place, and his duty to help the people of Middle Earth, and all of these things start to come back, and he's sort of looking around, and he sees that in his men, like, that stuff never really left. He was actually he might have been, like, suppressing it, and maybe that he realizes, like, that wasn't the right thing to do, keeping all of these men from being the people they are meant to be. And for me, not being the person I've meant to be, I'm not going to check out anymore. And so he sort of rediscovers his purpose in this moment. And so then he sort of, like, looks back at me and gives a nod, like a little bit of a thanks. And then he turns to the men, and he's like, men, is this what you want? And they're like, yeah, It's like, should we, for our fallen brother? And they're like, yeah. And then he kind of gets like a little bit of a wry smile on his face. And he goes, well then, gentlemen, I think it's time we hunt some orc. And everybody's like, ah! They all lose it. And immediately they start breaking, to their shelters. They start gathering things. They start, they start breaking their camp because they're ready to move, and they're going to move right now. And Hadant's like, bring rations for 6 days of travel. We'll catch them before they get to, such and such a place. And we'll make them pay, and we'll uncover exactly what's going on and all that kind of stuff. And, all the men are like, yeah. And they, keep breaking and start doing their own thing, grouping up, helping each other get ready. And so I walk up to Hadant, and I'm like, I'm so glad to hear you say that, Hadant. Yes, here's the thing. Like I said, I saw multiple blood trails. They're going to have a lot of wounded. It's going to be slowing them down. And I know it's a 2-day head start, but we can catch them up. And I think if we take this path, and then Hadant's like, whoa. And he sort of just stops me for a second. He's like, young one, look. I can't thank you enough for all that you've done over the last few days, all the information you provided, but more importantly, for all the things you've done for me and helping me, realize that I can't just sit idle and wait for the end to come. I need to fight back against that darkness with everything that I have. And I can't ever repay you for reminding me of that. But then here comes the but. And he puts his hand on my shoulder. He's like, but this isn't your fight. Gilrain sent you here for a purpose. I don't know if you've finished the purpose, if there's more to your purpose. I don't know what your purpose is. But that's what you need to do. And then furthermore, look, there's a fallen dwarf in that shelter over there who will die without more aid. Stay with the dwarf. Help him finish recovering. And, make that as part of your mission. And so I just kind of drop my head, it just all of a sudden it all just falls off of my face. I was ready to go. It's finally, we had a group, we were ready. Brothers in arms, we were going to go do the right thing. And Hadant shoots it down. And I realize on some level that he's actually kind of right. Somebody does need to stay back with the dwarf. Chasing after the orcs isn't necessarily my mission. It might actually be more important that the information of the dwarfs and everything that happened get back, so that a more cohesive central plan can be developed or executed or whatever. And so I'm like, sure. But I'm almost heartbroken, to be honest with you. Disappointed isn't like a strong enough word because, again, like, yeah. So then I watch as, all these men get together, patting each other on the shoulder and helping each other getting ready and checking each other's packs and, pulling the swords out of the scabbards and making sure they're good to go and sliding them back in. And I sort of step aside to the side of the road so I'm out of the way, and they all do their thing. And then after actually a pretty short amount of time, you realize, like, these guys were rangers all along, or wardens or whatever. They're ready to go, and they're moving. So as they move, they form up and they start moving down the road. And I step into the road and I watch them. And, I hear laughter and I hear huzzahs and I hear different things. As they get further away, the sound sort of fades and, almost gets lost in the breeze a little bit. And then eventually there's like a little bend. And I keep watching them and they go around the bend and then they're finally out of sight. And, and so they're gone. And so I stand there for a moment, and it's almost eerily quiet, even though there's from the breeze. And I sort of drop my head down, and I realize, let me go check on the dwarf. And I sort of gingerly, push aside whatever, the flap or whatever, the door, whatever it is, And Floki is there. And he's not like asleep, but he's not fully awake either. He's just resting and sort of drained. But at the sound of the noise, he sort of kind of stirs a little bit and opens his eyes. And then when he sees that it's me, he sort of like, with a great deal of effort, he gets up to one elbow and he looks at me. And again, my face is just hollow. And he can tell, and he just, suddenly gets a concerned expression. And he says, "Please tell me, what happened to my brother?" So, what I'm going to do, let me check something. I'm going to do a healing roll. I'm just going to do a straight healing roll. Luckily, healing is a favored trait because I actually rolled an Eye of Sauron. But because I get to choose the other die, I got a success. So, what I was checking was to see, get a rough idea how long it takes to get him back to health. If I totally bombed it, I would have made it take a long time. But it was never going to be like, oh, and then you killed him because you put arsenic in his, in his, healing tea. It's not going to be anything dumb like that. But, so let's say it's going to take 4 days. If I had great success, I would have made it 2. Regular success is D4. If I had failed D6, and if it was some kind of bomb, like an Eye of Sauron bomb, I would have done like a D8 or a D10. So 4 days pass, and let's roll that weather tracker. Let's see what happens in those 4 days. The first day, it's a 2, which means it's the same. Second day, stays the same. So it's hot. So he's trying to, like, at night he can't get comfortable. His sleep is a little restless. I'm trying to do my best. A 1 makes it up 1. So on the third day, the heat breaks a little bit, and I can see him getting a little bit of his strength back because of it. Like, it helps. Again, it's that light breeze. In this case, it's almost a little bit more pleasant. It sort of reinvigorates him a little bit. And then finally, 2, 3. On the fourth day, let's see what the weather does. 2, it stays the same. So It's warm, but it's not like uncomfortable. Yeah. So anyway, on that fourth day, after, finally getting like maybe a decent night's sleep when the heat broke, I can tell like he might be ready. And so I approach him. I'm like, Floki, like, look, dwarf, are you able to travel? And he looks at me and he's like, yes, I absolutely can, but please do me a favor. And it's a big favor. It's a big ask. And I'm like, what is it? And he's like, please, will you accompany me back to the Blue Mountains? I know it's not a short distance, but while I'm able to travel, I fear that in my state, if anything were to happen, I would be easily overcome. And I could genuinely use your escort to help guarantee my safety. And again, it's a further thing, like, I sort of think and like wonder how the wardens are doing chasing the orc. And, but I realize he's not wrong, and this is something I can do. So I'm like, of course, I'll help you get back to the Blue Mountains. So we spend a couple hours getting everything ready, and, maybe I make him like a little bit of a walking stick to help, so he can sort of limp along. And we travel. So what I need to do is I need to brush grid tool. I think that's what I want. We're going to go to the Hall of Dwarves. What I'm going to do is, so it's a pretty straight shot, and we'll just say like, this might sound cheap, but what I'm going to do is I'm not going to... So this is the route we take. We basically go like here, and then we go up. And, the dwarf, he's been here before, so he knows the best way to get here. And so while the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10... So a 10-day journey, let's say it takes 15 days because we're moving a little slow. But the dwarf, sort of knows the way, and he sort of helps us avoid, problem areas and stuff like that. And, yeah, so it ends up being an uneventful journey overall. Again, like I could do a journey mechanic, but I don't think it's that important at this moment, and it's not entirely unfamiliar territory to the whole party. Like I said, Loki came here on his way out, so I get to the Hall of Dwarves, and when we get there, the dwarves skeptical of me, but they see Floki and they greet him warmly, and they're like, Floki, oh brother, it's so good to have you back. Let me just undo a little bit more. And so, it's like, oh, you need care, you need help. And he's like, yes, no, but, please, I have this, warden to thank for getting me back safely. And they sort of nod in appreciation. And they're about to help Floki away, and he stops him for a second, and he turns back, and he's like, I'll never forget this. Thank you. The dwarves, and me especially, I especially owe you a debt that will be very difficult to repay, and we will not forget this. And then he's like, okay, and then he sort of turns back, and he's like, I have, tragic news, and there's much that we should discuss. Take me immediately, and and then they sort of lose track of the conversation. But clearly, he's going to go directly to the people he needs to speak to, and they're going to talk about that. There's no time to waste. And so I'm sort of standing there in like the entrance halls, and a couple of the dwarves that guard the doors, they're sort of looking at me a little awkwardly. And they're like, well, I imagine, after the traveling, you might need you might need a hot meal and some supplies. And I say, oh yeah, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you. And so we're walking to sort of like the mess hall, and they're making small talk, thanking me for, not abandoning Floki, helping him get home, how much it means, et cetera, et cetera. But it's just sort of pleasantries, sincere, but not, but pleasantries. And so I find my way to the mess hall, and one of the dwarves says, please have a seat. I'll bring you some food. And he turns to his, fellow guard. He's like, gather rations, gather wineskins, and put it all together so that, he's ready to travel when the time comes. And so I thank them both. And a moment later, the first one comes back with some food. He's like, please enjoy. A little tankard of ale. He's like, but I'm going to go back to my duty. But if you need anything, somebody here will help you, okay? And I nod. I look around. I'm like, thanks. I appreciate it. And so I start to eat. But it's sort of the thing where, like, I'm on the end of one of the tables, a little bit off by myself. And it's not that, and there's little clusters of other dwarves, taking in a meal. And, there's laughter, and again, more pats on the back. And it's not that they're deliberately isolated. They just have no idea who I am or what I'm doing or why I'm here. And so I just sort of, the food's good, the ale is good, and I get my fill, but I sort of look around, and I'm on the outside looking in. Much like, in the beginning when I was at the warden camp, it's sort of, it's that kind of scene again. It's sort of, I'm still that person on the end of the table, and I still haven't found my way into who my family, my people might be. And so I finish my food, and shortly thereafter, the second dwarf comes back with my resupplied pack. And he's like, I put in extra, we even had a little bit of lambas bread. It's not my thing, but we had it in the stores, and it might help you. So, please take it, and I hope your travels are safe, and, these supplies get you to wherever you need to go. And I nod and I thank him, and he's like, okay, well, I'm going to also get back to my post. And I get it, and I thank him again, and he goes off, and I sort of look around, and again, it's just me sitting there at the end of the table. And I realize, this isn't my place either. And I sort of put my pack on, I tighten the straps, I make sure I'm good to go. It's comfortable, I know it's going to be a long journey. And I walk out the doors of the halls of the dwarves. As I do so, the two guards, they give me one last nod, and I head back out into Middle-earth and fade to black. So that's where we're going to end this second chapter. A couple things I was thinking about. So I ended the session before this one saying, okay, I'm going to make the choice. I'm going to go after the orcs. I'm going to do that. And I decided that it made more sense for me not to go after the orcs myself. There's other things that happen in the adventure, depending on where you want to go and what you want to do, which I could have done. Like I said, the camp being overrun by the orcs and Flonar being killed, that is part of one of the adventures. But I think I said at some point, I thought it was early on in the second chapter, like, I don't want to just run adventures in the book solo, if that makes sense. Like, I want to use the tools to help spawn, improvised events. I don't want to just say, now I'm in the section 3 of the adventure and I'm running myself through it. Because, again, not that I don't exactly know not that I don't know some of the things that are coming, because I'm making it all up on my own and talking to myself like a lunatic, but I don't want it to be that much knowledge of what's coming, where it's like, this is the next step, and then this is what's planned here, and then, who knows, someday I might want to run it, so I didn't want to, but the main reason is because I didn't want to just take an adventure that was pre-written and just run it for myself. I wanted to let things develop and see how organically the story played out and if things made sense and using the tools at hand and blah, blah, blah. So that's why I didn't do stuff with the Hall of Dwarves, and that's why I didn't chase after the orcs. I felt like the chasing after the orcs also made logical sense, but and I will say, and then as I was, I liked the idea that, this chapter, again, like we were sort of mentioning a moment ago, this chapter opened with me at the Warden camp somewhere over here, wherever it was, and near the last, I forget, I know I meant it to be in one place, not, I meant it to be at the Forsaken Inn, but ended up at the last bridge, whatever it was, but, I messed it all up, but there was the scene where I was there sort of on my own, watching all of these, wardens with more experience, more time, the bonds they had formed, and realizing that was part of the reason, that was part of what I want. I'm not here to be a hero, but I just want a family to fit in with. And I liked the idea that when it came time for this family to rediscover its purpose and to act as one, I wasn't part of that family. It's not like I just showed up and 2 days later we're getting matching tattoos, right? So that was sort of the thought process. So I didn't know exactly how I was going to get there, but I liked the idea that I started not knowing who my family was. I thought I made some inroads, but reality is reality, and it's going to take a little bit more time. It might take more service. I'm still on my own, wandering solo as a strider. So I don't know if it actually worked, but that's kind of something that occurred to me that I kind of liked. And it's it happened again at the dwarves. Sure, I helped get Floki back, but it's not like suddenly I'm one of them and again matching tattoos. I'm gonna suddenly have sleeves of matching tattoos with all the family I found. So it again made sense that they would be grateful, they would help me, they would resupply me, whatever I needed, they would help with. If I were injured, they would have helped heal me. But at the end of the day, they still have to go on and do the things that they need to do, and I need to get back to my path. So there you go. So that's the end of the second chapter in the One Rings Strider mode, Tales of the Strider, the solo play. I really, again, I said this earlier, of all the solo systems I've played, the ones that pulled me back, that stay in my brain the most are this, by a mile, and some Dragonbane. And it's both because they let you experience the world and not just the mechanics. As much as I loved, Caernathalis, and I loved my time with the Call of Cthulhu solo adventures, but they're sort of very choose your own adventure. So they mechanize how you experience the world. If it was a little more open and freeform like this, I might actually enjoy it more. And I wonder, maybe somebody's put some Oracle systems to a Cthulhu kind of setting. That could be, I guess Vaesen, right? If that has a solo mode. But yeah, no, I continue to deeply, deeply enjoy this experience. And it's good to have a solo thing on hand for when we can't get everybody together. But I don't know if I would immediately spin up chapter 3. I like the idea of taking some time to think about it. I like the idea of pouring through the books a little bit to see if anything sparks ideas. And so if I needed to pull up another solo thing ready to go, I don't know if it would necessarily be this. I might, want to kick the tires of another system and see how it worked. But, yeah, there you go. So that's it. Second chapter, The Tales of the Strider, is all wrapped up. I hope you got some enjoyment out of it. I appreciate everybody who's checked these videos out. I obviously had a great time running the game, as always, and we all deeply appreciate everybody who checks out the videos, everybody who likes, subscribes, comments, whatever, all that stuff. We genuinely appreciate it. If you're watching this, then you have found our YouTube channel. Like I mentioned, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff if you want. If you prefer audio versions of these actual plays, just search for Black Lodge Trivia Night wherever you get your podcasts, and we should show up. I do probably too much CRPG stuff as well, so you can... When I said Lord of the Rings Online, it's because I'm doing a playthrough of all the book quests in Lord of the Rings Online, so that's on the YouTube channel as well. But yeah, none of that's important. The main thing is, we genuinely appreciate everybody who jumps in and check these out. If you want to chat about stuff, you can join our Discord. There's a link in the show notes. Hoping that Matt and Patrick and myself, we can all sort of get back on the same page pretty soon. So hopefully that comes to be. So thank you to everybody again for checking this out. Again, this is the conclusion of the second chapter, and I had a blast. So take care. Thanks again. The in-session music was provided by Tabletop RPG Music and composed by Ian Fisher. You can find the Patreon at www.patreon.com/tabletop RPG music. That's all one word.